Today I'm going to be showing you how easy it is to make a good paella at home. The paella is one of the most delicious rice recipes you can make that comes from Spain. Now let's start with the ingredients that you're going to need to make this paella. The first thing we're going to need is 1 teaspoon of paprika, 2 ounces of snow peas, substitutions later on in the video, half a cup of butter beans, 2 tablespoons of oil, 2 teaspoons of salt, but this will be more to taste, only a pinch of saffron, a large roma tomato which was about 4 ounces, 2 twigs of rosemary, and for the liquid we're going to be using 6 cups of water. This may seem like it's a lot, but later on I'll explain why. We're also going to need 1.5 pounds of chicken thigh. Then the most important ingredient, the rice. We're going to need 1 cup. But not just any type of rice, we need bomba rice. Bomba rice is a short grain rice that grows in the Valencia region of Spain, which is where the paella comes from. The brand I got was Matiz, but it comes in many different brands. You could get this rice online because on your local supermarket it's gonna be a little hard to come by. This one I believe I got it at Whole Foods and I think it was around $8, but of course this is gonna depend on where you live. Now before we start cooking the paella, what we need to do is prep all of our ingredients. Now what I got here are snow peas, but usually in an authentic paella you will use judias verdes, which I believe in English you will call them runner beans. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut the snow peas into halves, but if they're on the bigger side then you could cut them to 3 or 4 pieces. Not traditional, but you can also use green beans. Then we're gonna prepare the tomato by grating it. Here I'm using the bigger side of a box grater, but you can also use a food processor if you like. Once you start grating your tomato by hand, you'll see how the skin tends to come out. What I was trying to do here was every time I see a little piece of skin, I will kind of try to tuck it in so I could try to grate it, but at the end I wasn't successful, so don't worry about it. Just grate it until you get to the end part. Now just in case if you wonder if you could use a tomato paste, I have done this recipe with tomato paste before just because I wanted to see what the taste was like, if it was the same, and the fresh tomato does make a difference, so I will stick to that. But of course, if all you have is tomato paste, then use it. Now let's go on to the protein. What we're using here is chicken. Even though usually for a paella valenciana it has rabbit and chicken as well, but I couldn't find any rabbit, so chicken will have to do it. Now the first thing I like to do to the chicken thighs is to remove the skin. Now this is just a preference because I've seen people doing it with the skin, but I personally don't like it because I don't like when the skin gets kind of soft, so that's why I remove it. So the question will be, well, why not just use skinless, boneless chicken thighs or even chicken breast? And the answer is simple. We use chicken thighs with the bone in because we want the bone. The bone is gonna help us make a very delicious stock for the rice. Now you don't have to throw away that delicious skin. You could get that skin, clean it, season it, and then you fry it. Oh my god, and it's so good. You make the best chicharrones of the skin. It's delicious. Then the way I cut the chicken is I take the part that doesn't have a bone and I just cut it lengthwise, going down. Now when cutting your chicken, make sure to check for any extra bones because like right here this piece had a little piece of bone right there, so you want to remove that. Then that piece of chicken that we just cut, I like to cut it in 2 pieces. You also want to remove any excess fat you see from the chicken because a little bit of fat here and there is good because it will render off while it sears, but you don't want to leave too much on, so just scrape it off just like I did. Then the piece with the bone in, we want to cut it in half. Now I know a lot of people like to leave their chicken whole, but I'd rather cut it into small pieces so you could have many bites of the chicken and the rice, just like this one. Now the saffron is the very last thing that we're gonna prep before making the rice. What I like to do is just put the saffron in a little dish and then add just a couple of tablespoons of water. Then just try to kind of softly crush it, try to break it apart so it can infuse the water. Now you're gonna see where we're gonna cook our paella. We're gonna cook our paella in a paella. And yes, the pan has the same name as the dish, a paella. Before I used to think it was a paellera, but no, it's a paella. This paella is a 13-inch one. Now we're gonna place the paella over medium-high heat and we're gonna add the oil. Right here I use vegetable oil. Normally what you will use is olive oil, but I didn't have none, so that's what I used. Then once your oil is hot, you're gonna add the chicken to the center of the pan. We're gonna place the chicken in the center of the paella because if you're making this on a stove top, this is where most of the heat is gonna be concentrated in. Then we're just gonna sprinkle some salt all around the border of the pan. This is gonna absorb some of the oil so it won't jump and burn us. Then I also like to sprinkle some salt on top of the chicken. And we're going to sear this chicken for about 15 minutes. You just have to flip it a couple of times so it won't burn too much on one side. Now, a paella pan is what traditionally it is used to make a paella, yes. But you could use other pans. In my opinion, any pan that is not a non-stick pan will work just as fine. Cast irons and stainless steels are good options. Now, after you sear the chicken, you want to move it to the borders so you can leave space in the middle to add the rest of the ingredients. Just sear your chicken a little more than what I did so it can have more color because that's going to add flavor. I just didn't want to brown it too much for the video. Then we're going to add the paprika in the center and you want to quickly stir so it won't burn. Then right after that, we're going to add the tomato. We're going to stir this around and we're going to saute for about 2 minutes or until you notice that all the liquid that the tomato had has been reduced. In Spanish, we call this sofreír. Now, once your tomatoes start looking like this, almost like a paste, you'll know you're ready for the next step. Remember that this is a simple rice dish recipe that doesn't have a lot of seasonings, but really where we get the majority of the flavor is on how we cook our ingredients. Then you're gonna add your runner beans or your snow peas, whatever you was able to find. Then I just give it a little mix before adding the water because I used frozen snow peas and I don't want them to get mushy. Then we're gonna add 3 cups of water first. Then you wanna take note on where your water level is because this is important. This is all the water you need to cook your rice, so keep that in mind. Then you're gonna add the rest of your water, which is the other 3 cups of water. The reason why we add so much water is because we want to cook the chicken in the water to make a very flavorful chicken stock for the rice. Then we're gonna stir everything together and make sure we scrape the bottom of that pan so we can release all those flavorful bits at the bottom of the pan. Now we let this cook for 20 minutes on high heat or until it reaches the level that it had the 3 cups of water. Then we need to add the rice, but before we add the rice, we need to stir and taste the water to make sure if it needs some salt. Right here in total, I used the 2 teaspoons of salt. Then we're going to add the water infused saffron and mix everything together. And make sure you clean that bowl because good saffron is not cheap. Now we need to add the rice. Now there's a lot of people that are very traditional and like doing things a certain specific way. For example, some people say that the best way to add the rice is to make a cross shape with the rice and then stir it around a little bit. But for me, it's easier to just spread the rice all over the pan slowly to make sure that the rice spreads evenly. And then with the spoon, I move it around a little bit just to make sure it's all over the pan. And I also make sure that none of the chicken still has rice on the top because we want to make sure that we cook all the rice. And remember, after you move the rice around to make sure that it is placed where you want it, you're not gonna touch it again. Then we're gonna add the butter beans. But this is only because I'm using canned beans. If you have the fresh ones, then you can add them at the beginning. Then the very last thing we're gonna add is the 2 twigs of rosemary. And we could remove the rosemary after about 5 minutes. But in total, you're gonna cook the rice for about 12 minutes or until most of the water has evaporated on high heat. Then you're gonna lower your heat to medium and finish cooking the paella for 10 minutes. Then you're ready to serve. It is said that a good paella should always have a good socarrat. And basically what it is a nice even brown color under the rice that makes it a little bit crispy. Also, a good indicator that you made the paella right is that you have loose grains of rice. Nice and fluffy, moist, but not wet. This is by far one of the best one-pan meals that you can make. You got your rice, you got your chicken, and it's really, really good. Look how it looks. Nice, fluffy grain. Now the chicken, let me tell you about the chicken. The chicken was so good. It is very moist in the inside, perfectly cooked. It is really good. Now, in my opinion, this recipe doesn't need a side, but a good green simple salad goes very well along this. I also made a sangria to go along with this paella. I'll link all of those recipes in the description below. And once again, thanks for watching and buen provecho. See you on the next video.